Hello everyone, welcome to Microsoft Partner Enablement Program. Our vision for this technical session is to empower every Microsoft partner to achieve more and improve their customer support experience. My name is Praveen and I'm a technical advisor here at Microsoft. I'm partnering with my colleague Tanya for this particular session. Today we are going to discuss about Microsoft Teams installation, setup, basic troubleshooting. This session encompasses overview about Teams installation, features, common troubleshooting scenarios that we get at Microsoft. And this session is going to be split into two parts. The first part is going to be taken by me, and the second part is going to be taken by my colleague Tanya. The first part is going to contain some basics about Teams and its deployment and troubleshooting. The second part will include Federation access and troubleshooting. So the second part is going to be a little bit heavier. The first part is going to be a little bit breezy. So let's get started. So today's agenda, as I discussed, is going to be what is Microsoft Teams, types of Teams client, prerequisites and readiness, deployment. And the second part is going to be troubleshooting, common issues that we get, and some resources that you can utilize later on. So what is Teams? Now, Microsoft Teams is an entirely new experience that brings together people, conversations, and content, along with the tools that teams need nowadays for a better collaborative experience, a more immersive, better collaborative experience. It is naturally integrated with familiar Office applications and is built from ground up on Office 365 Global and Secure Cloud. Teams is built onto Office 365 groups, Microsoft Graph, and the same enterprise level security, compliance, manageability as the rest of Office 365 and M365. Teams leverages identity stored in Azure Active Directory. Teams keeps on working when you're offline or experience spotty network connections. However, you do need a live internet connections for calls. Now, when you create a team, now Teams includes a lot of features like video conferencing, live events, audio conferencing, PSTN calling, sharing desktop, application sharing, chat, SharePoint files. All these things are involved. So when you create a team, there are a lot of underlying things that get provisioned. So the things that do get provisioned are Microsoft Groups, SharePoint Online, which provides you with site and document library to store Microsoft Teams files. Then Exchange Online, a shared mailbox is provisioned with a shared calendar. Then OneNote is created. The moment you create, these are the three things that will come up online automatically. Also, as you know, Microsoft Team ties into a lot of other technologies of Office 365, such as Planner and Power BI. To customize and extend Teams, we can add third-party applications through apps, bots, and connectors. With Teams, you can include people from outside your organization by adding them as guests to a Teams or Teams channel. We are going to talk a lot about how guest access works and troubleshooting in the second section of our presentation. As part of Microsoft 365 and Office 365, Teams offers a very robust development platform, so you can build your teamwork hub you need for your organization. Now, we'll just talk about a little basic features about Microsoft Teams. So Teams provides you with features of like collaboration and IM. Teams provides this ability to do IM in channels, provide a private chat and group chat. Teams channel is a place where everyone on the team can openly have conversations. Private chats are only visible to those people in the chat, and files that you share in a private chat are stored in OneDrive for Business. All the permission sets of respect SharePoint permissions. Teams also provides you with audio and video calling. You can make one-on-one call, group call with anyone in your organization directly from a chat without having to host a Teams meeting. You can also make a PSTN call either with a phone system with calling plan from Microsoft or with direct routing connecting your existing PSTN connectivity via an SBC to Microsoft Teams. Meetings and live events. Teams delivers chat-based collaboration, calling meetings and live events. So you can expand the audience of your meeting. Presenter can do instant messaging. Uh, audio, video, file sharing, desktop sharing, application sharing in Teams meeting. In addition, by using audio conferencing, participants can attend meeting from regular phones by dialing to the meeting or by dialing out from the meeting. With Teams live events, users in your organization can broadcast video and meeting content for large online audiences. Audiences can watch the live meeting or record even in Yammer, Teams, or Stream, and can interact with the presenters using moderated Q&A or a Yammer conversation, just like the one we are having right now. Teams provides a very robust framework for apps, bots, and connectors. Channels are most valuable when extended with apps that include tabs, connectors, and bots that increase their value to the members of your team. Because not every team is similar, you can create customized apps and bots so that your team can perform at an optimal level. Teams provides a number of apps published by Microsoft and by third parties to engage users, support productivity, and integrate commonly used business services into Teams. We can get apps from the Teams store. There are a lot of apps that are available on the Teams store. Bots are automated programs that respond to queries or give updates and notifications about details users find interesting or want to stay informed about. Bots allow users to interact with cloud services such as task management, scheduling, and polling in a Teams chat. Then the last option that we have is connectors. Connectors are very interesting and very helpful. Connectors keep your team current by delivering content and updates from services you frequently use directly into a channel. With connectors, your team's users can receive updates from services such as Twitter, Trello, Wunderlist, GitHub, Azure DevOps services, and a lot more. Moving on to the next slide. Now, there are a lot of types of Teams clients. Basically, you can categorize into four. One is a desktop client. Then we have the web client, mobile client, and there are devices. Devices would include a desk phone or your Teams meeting room system. Now, the desktop client is a standalone application and is available in Microsoft 365 apps for enterprises. Teams is available in 32-bit and 64-bit for Windows 8.1 and later, ARM64 for Windows 10 on ARM, and Windows Server 2012 and later. On Windows, Teams requires .NET Framework 4.5 or later. The Teams installer will offer to install the prerequisites. On Linux, package managers such as apt and yum will try to install any requirements for you automatically. Teams desktop clients provides real-time communication support, audio, video, content sharing for Teams meeting, group calling, and peer-to-peer one-on-one call. Teams client has Microsoft Teams has clients available for desktop on Windows, Mac, and Linux, web and mobile on Android and iOS. These clients will require an active internet connection and do not support an offline mode. It's important. However, it will still work It's just that the active connectivity will not be there, especially the calls won't work. Desktop clients can be downloaded from teams.microsoft.com/downloads, and the users can install the Teams client on their own if they have local permissions. Unlike Mac, on Windows, because it gets installed in the user profile, the users do not need a lot of permissions. However, on the Mac, you will require permission to install the Teams client. Now, Teams client can be installed through different distribution methods. Either you can install manually, or you can use distributed methods such as Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager or JAMF Pro on Mac OS. The Windows client is deployed to the app data, as I mentioned earlier. So that's where the users do not require elevated permissions. The Windows client stores its data in %app %. So it goes into the local app data. Under app data, you'll find Microsoft Teams. Over there, that's where you'll find most of the Teams bits. If you are troubleshooting any issues and you wanted to delete cache, this is where you come to delete cache. Squirrel temp includes the information about the installation. So if you have any update issues going on, open the Squirrel temp file and see what's going on. That's a good way to start troubleshooting when it comes to Teams deployment and updates. Also, a couple of things. There are a couple of rules that do get created when you install Microsoft Teams on the local Windows firewall for both TCP and UDP. So if you have an issue where you suspect where calling is failing inbound or outbound, maybe you can start. This is the first place that you can start by looking at the Windows firewall and see if the rules are created and there is no deny there. Mac users can install Teams by using a PKG installation file for Mac OS. Administrative access is required to install the Mac client. The Mac client is installed to the application folder. For Linux, fairly new, Linux users will be able to install native Linux packages in .deb and .rpm format. Installing the deb or RPM format will automatically install the package repository. The sign-in keys to enable auto updates using the Systems Package Manager is installed automatically. Microsoft Teams ships monthly, and if the repository was installed correctly, then your System Package Manager should handle auto updating in the same way it does for the other systems. Now, unlike the previous version of Teams that was Skype for Business, the web client is amazing on Microsoft Teams. The web client, you can access the web client by going to teams.microsoft.com. The web client is a fully functional client that can be used for a variety from a variety of browsers. Web clients support calling and meetings by using WebRTC, so there is no plugin. Unlike the previous version, there is no plugin required, or where you don't have to download anything to run the Teams on the web browser. The browser must be configured to allow third-party cookies, though. The web client browser version detection upon connection. So whenever you go to teams.microsoft.com, the Teams server is going to do a detection of the browser. And if an unsupported browser is detected, it will block access to the web interface and recommend that you download the desktop client or the mobile version. Very interesting point is, as long as an operating system can run the supported browser, Teams is supported on a desktop computer. This means running a Firefox on a Linux operating system is an option for using Teams. For mobile operating system, we recommend to run the Teams mobile app, which is a brilliant app available for Android and iOS. However, you can run the web version on the mobile phone. It is supported. However, we would not recommend it because a lot of features may not be available. Now, I'm a big fan of the mobile client. The Teams mobile apps are available for Android and iOS and are geared up on the go users participating in chat conversations, especially in the time of pandemic where a lot of people are working from home and remote, where we don't want to sit at the desk all the time. Mobile client is a great option. For mobile apps, you can go to the relevant stores. It could be the Google Play or Apple App Store. The Windows app is retired as of now on June 20th, 2018, and most probably it's not going to work. Now, the supported version, this is something that IT admins might want to consider, and that is on Android, the support is limited to the last 4 versions of Android. When a new version of Android is released, the new version and the previous 3 versions are officially supported. On the iOS part, this is going to be the 2 most recent versions. That means if a new one comes in, the previous one goes out. Now for the client update and management, clients are currently automatically updated by Microsoft Teams service with no IT administrator intervention required. If an update is available, the client will automatically download the update, and when the app has reached a certain period of time where it is idle, the process will begin. For the Teams readiness, Now Teams combines multiple Office 365 services and is therefore dependent on the correct implementation and operation of these services. Which means that Teams is dependent on SharePoint Online, Exchange Online, OneDrive for Business. Although not all services are required, but we do recommend that you implement all of them. Obviously, if you're not going to assign, let's say, a OneDrive for Business license, so you're going to miss out all the features that OneDrive for Business offers in Microsoft Teams, for example, sharing a file. If you choose not to implement certain services, this will affect obviously the functionality of the service. Now, as mentioned, every team is different. There is no one size fit for all approach to collaboration. Microsoft Office and Office 365 are designed to meet the unique needs of every team, empowering people to communicate, collaborate, and achieve more with purpose-built integrated applications. When deciding which Office 365 apps and services to use, think about the work your organization does and types of conversation your teams need to have. Now, Teams as the hub for teamwork is where people, including people outside your organization, can actively connect and collaborate in real time to get things done. Have a conversation right where the work is happening. For example, your team may require a lot of interaction with your suppliers. So you need to interact with your team which works on that and design your team as that. So maybe you might require some bots or some connectors so that you can collaborate in a better way with your vendors. Now, Teams is the place to have informal chat, right? Iterate quickly on a project, work with Teams file, and collaborate on shared deliverables. All Teams also works with other Office 365 technologies like Outlook. Outlook is a very familiar environment, collaborative environment for email, and in a more formal, structured manner, or when targeted and direct communication is required. SharePoint for sites, portals, and intelligent content services, business process automation, and enterprise search. SharePoint keeps content at the center of teamwork, making all type of content available, easily shareable and accessible across teams. SharePoint does provide a very tight integration with Outlook, Yammer, and Teams. It enables a very seamless content collaboration across conversations and experiences. The next product that in line for Office 365 is OneDrive for Business. We use it for storing files and sharing them with people that a user invites. Content that a user saves to OneDrive for Business is private until the user shares it with others. So make sure you're aware of with whom you're sharing and what is the permission level. Making it it's the best option to store personal and draft documents that are not intended to be shared or not need to be shared. Yammer again is a great tool for people to connect across your organization, drive company-wide initiatives, share best practices and build communications around common topics of interest or areas of practice. Crowdsource ideas to foster open discussion with people across the company. Then we have familiar Office apps like Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and OneNote. Now the IT admin experience, this is where most of you guys probably are going to fit into. So you need to plan your Microsoft Teams. You need to plan what kind of licenses you're going to use, right? You'll find the list of licenses in the resource section at the end of this presentation. Please go through it to find out what plan suits best for your organization. Now, plan your network requirement. As Teams is a real-time communication, this is where we need to invest a little bit more of our time to, in terms of planning. Now, I have added some firewall and DNS requirements at the end of the presentation. Please go through it. Also, please go through the section where which talks about VPN requirement, how to set up call quality and split tunneling when you have VPNs in your organization. Microsoft Teams IP addresses and firewall settings have changed, where we do provide 3 different types of IP addresses, which is used for optimal connection. So please go through it to make sure that the correct IP addresses are whitelisted on your firewall. Now, if your organization has synchronized identities to Azure Active Directory, then provision the users appropriately. So whenever you are in a hybrid scenario, let's say you have either a hybrid scenario or synchronized Active Directory, make sure the users are created on premises and you run a proper sync. You'll also have to understand your company's requirement if you want to be in a coexistent and interoperability mode for Skype for Business and Teams. So this is where you can take a call whether you want to be in a Teams in an island mode or a Teams only mode. The goal is always to move to Teams only mode. Island mode and all the other modes are just temporary modes where you will reside for some time and then move on. Now, when you install Microsoft Teams client, please make sure you are aware of the system requirements. Ideally, most of the computers in today's date are well equipped to handle Microsoft Teams. However, at times you may come across scenarios where probably the blur option is not working. So make sure that the system meets those requirements so that all these great features are available on the client. As mentioned earlier, you can go to teams.microsoft.com/download, where you can download the Teams client. And here is the link and the places where you can download for mobile client version for Android, iOS, and how to access the web app. Now coming to the section that is extremely important, and that is troubleshooting. So in troubleshooting, we are going to talk about 7 scenarios: auto attendant and call queue, dial pad missing scenarios for Skype for Business client. We'll not dwell a lot on this because we are not getting these cases a lot these days. However, it's an interesting scenario. Then, and the same applies for dial pad missing for Teams client. My colleague Tanya is going to discuss a lot about Teams guest access and federated chat and Teams meeting tab missing. Very interesting scenario. And the missing meeting tab or meetings cannot sync. So the last 4 parts are going to be delivered by Tanya. I'll just quickly walk through over the first 3 scenarios. Scenario number 1 is going to be auto attendant and call queue. Now, auto attendants, as we are aware, is we set up to use menu options to route calls based on caller inputs. So the primary purpose of an auto attendant is to direct a caller to an appropriate person in the organization. Now, callers can be directed to specific people within your organization or to call queues. So we can use a combination of auto attendant and call queues to as per our organization needs. Now, we can have call queues and auto attendant in a way where you can specify business hours, off hours, and holidays. Each call queue has a specific language and time zone. Now, if you do business with multiple languages or have people across working in different part of the world, you can create many different auto attendants as you need to accommodate the caller. So you can probably have you probably are residing in US, so your first auto attendant could be English, where you can actually specify that if you want to speak in English, press 1. If you want to speak in French, press 2. Or if you want to speak in Spanish, press 3. That way. So as per your organization needs, you can configure your auto attendant. Now, for each auto attendant, you can configure an operator. While you can configure an operator calls to go to a variety of different destinations, the operator feature is designed to allow callers to talk to a specific person in your organization who can help them. Now, callers can reach auto attendant in multiple ways. It can be a direct call if you're configured, or by being redirected from another auto attendant or a call queue. Now, call queues. This is one of our favorite topics because we work in sort of a call center where we have a round robin type of a scenario when customers or partners open cases. That's how the call reaches us. So call queues are waiting areas for callers for situations where callers need to reach someone with a particular specialty such as sales or technical support rather than a very specific person. Now, you can use call queue to connect callers to the group of agents who can assist them. Callers are put on hold until an agent assigned to the queue is available to work. Call queues allow for specific routing of calls in cases where the total number of callers in the queue or the wait time exceeds the limit that you specify. Calls can be routed to specific people, voicemail, or other call queues or auto attendant if one of the threshold is met. Now, you can assign a phone number to a call queue. However, call queues do not provide separate call routing for off hours and holidays. Unless your call queue is staffed 24/7, we recommend assigning the phone number to an auto attendant that directs the call to call queue during business hours. Now, there are a few prerequisites. Now, whenever we are troubleshooting, we always look at the prerequisites. So before troubleshooting, it's always a good practice to look at whether we meet certain prerequisites. Otherwise, it happens that you continue troubleshooting and you find out that you missed out on a certain prerequisite. So the prerequisite for call queue and auto attendant is a resource account for each auto attendant and each call queue. a phone system virtual user license for each resource account. This is a free license. However, you do have to assign it to the resource account. Now, at least one Microsoft service or a direct routing number or a hybrid number for each resource account that you want to be directly disabled. The service account may be a toll or a toll-free number. So the resource account does get disabled just like how we have a disable account for resources on the Exchange side. Agents who receive from the call queue must be enabled for enterprise voice or must be on-premises users. If your agent are using Microsoft Teams app for call queue, then make sure they are on Teams only mode. This is one of the prerequisites, and a lot of in the initial days we did get a lot of cases where the users would not be on Teams only mode and they would not get incoming calls. Now, we did get a lot of scenarios where we found out that it takes a little bit of time for a auto attendant or a call queue, especially a call queue call, to get connected. So a new mode, that is the conferencing mode, was introduced. The conferencing mode is an option in the call queue that significantly reduces the amount of time it takes to connect Teams VoIP call or PSTN calls to an agent. Now, what clients do we use? Now, for conference mode to work, agents in the call queue must use one of the clients, either Teams desktop client, Teams Android app, or the iOS app. The Teams phone version, I think it is 1449/1.094 and later. Now, to set up an auto attendant, a resource account is required. So all auto attendants are associated to an underlying resource account. So each resource account requires a license in order for it to work, and this is available as an add-on. So you can go to billing, purchasing, and you can search for the phone system virtual user license, and then you can buy from there. It does not cost anything, and you can assign it to the resource account. Now, service numbers are optional for auto attendant and call queue. However, you need at least one service number in order for the callers to reach your auto attendant and call queue. This would be probably your borderline number. Now, resource account can either be toll or toll-free service numbers. You can request new numbers or port your existing numbers from the previous carriers. Now, if you are going to remove, we're going to talk about it later on, but if you're going to remove, always remove a full phone system license and assign the virtual user license in the same license activity. Now, if you remove the old license, save the user account changes, add the new license, and then save the account again, the resource account may not function, no longer function as expected. So if this happens, the best way to fix this problem is to actually create a new resource account for the virtual user license and remove the broken user account. Now, once the user account is created, it will get created as a disabled user account. So DUO, that's the disabled user account in the Azure Active Directory. And then the resource account will be provisioned in the Sky for Business forest with the SIP address defined using the user principal name. Then you assign the user account, then you assign the virtual user license, set the usage to match the location of the online services. Once this is done, you can run a get-cs online user to check the provisioning. I'll share a screenshot from my tenant on how it would ideally look like. once the license is assigned, you can assign the phone numbers to the resource account and associate this resource account to the application instance. So as discussed, the application instance is the resource account needs to be created and associated with an auto attendant or call queue. Now, this will enable calling the auto attendant or VoIP or PSTN and provide activity lookup in Sky for Business. So now when you're creating auto attendant, so you can use the following command, like you can create a variable and then set -msol user hyphen user principal name and the auto attendant address. To find out the service numbers in your organization, you can run the command get-cs online telephone number. Number type would be cloud. Inventory type would be service because you need at least one service number. And hyphen is not assigned. So whichever number is not assigned will show up. For hybrid numbers, you can run get-cs online telephone number. Over here, the number type would be hybrid instead of cloud, and the inventory type would be the same service and numbers that are not assigned. Now, to assign the service number, you can use the following command. You can run set-cs online voice application instance hyphen identity. You can specify the variable that we created earlier that would assign the instance to the resource account that we created, and you can mention hyphen telephone number. This is for online. For on-premises, if the number is on-premises, we'll be using CS Online application instance instead of the CS Online voice application instance. And over here, it will be hyphen on-prem phone number instead of the telephone number. Now, once the account is created, make sure that the account is valid, right? So you can validate the resource account. Now the resource account, if you are in a hybrid scenario, must be created on premises, or you can say that wherever the SRV Federation DNS records are pointing. So most of the time in a hybrid scenario, or on all the times the hybrid scenario, the SRV record is going to be pointing to your edge server. Make sure you validate the correct licenses assigned to the user. Then you can confirm the status, that is the application status, using get-cs online application instance association status hyphen identity and the identity of your auto attendant. Make sure it shows success. Then view application instance or instances associated with your auto attendant. You can run the command get-cs auto attendant hyphen identity. It will show you all the resource accounts that are associated. If you're not able to fix the problem, collect all these logs and update it in the case so that a Microsoft support representative can help you out. Now, one troubleshooting tip that I can provide here is that when you delete the resource account, so make sure you disassociate the telephone number from the resource account before deleting it. Otherwise, it gets stuck in pending mode. And to do that, you'll have to open up a ticket. To get it out, you'll have to open up either a ticket. So after you do that, you can delete. So once you disassociate, then you can delete the resource account in Microsoft Office 365 Admin Center. To disassociate, you can run the command set-cs online application instance. Identity would be the resource account OID and the on-premises telephone number. So we'll just quickly talk about what it looks like when you provision a user. So this is an output from my demo tenant. So whenever you are troubleshooting any kind of provisioning issues, that could be either user or auto attendant or call queue, I would recommend running get-cs online user, where you can specify the identity of the user and pipe it. NFL, you can check for assigned plan, provision plan. If it's a user, then hosted voicemail, hosted voicemail policy, whether it's enterprise enabled or not, and the hosting provider. These are the basic things that we check whenever we are troubleshooting. So over here, the assigned license, I would recommend to export it into a text file by specifying, let's say, export to, let's say, license.txt. And then you can open that in a notepad and you can compare the subscribe plan ID. So you can see on the screen, let me see. So when you can see the sub plan and the subscribe plan ID. So you need to check whether the same plan ID is showing under the provisioned plan. If it does not show and you have waited for, let's say, 24 hours, then the best way is not to remove the license, but to contact Microsoft support so that we can run a sync on our side so that this gets synchronized with our business voice directory, which we call BVD. And then you can verify whether the hosted voicemail policies and other settings are with the true or not. So we just quickly run through the creation of the resource account. Now, the application ID that you need to use when you create the application instances are shown on the screen. So to create, if you're creating it using PowerShell, so you can create new-cs application instance, hyphen user principal name. You can give the resource account's name. You can mention the UPN there, and you can mention the application ID. So obviously this is going to be associated with the auto attendant. Now, once you created the resource account and assign the license, you can click on assign, unassign to assign number and manage the resource account from here. Now, if let's say you have an on-prem account, so when the DNS server is pointing to SIP-Fed, that is the SFB Edge server, then you create the resource account on Skype for Business 2015 and above, CU8 and above, and the numbers remain the same. You can see that over here on the online and in the on-prem site, it's going to be the same. So the command would be new-cs hybrid application endpoint -SIP address of the resource account. Whatever display name you want. Application ID would be if you're creating an auto attendant or a call queue. OU where you're going to create the user account, and the line URI, which will where you specify the telephone number. Make sure you run Azure AD connection synchronization so that this account gets synchronized to the cloud. Once this is done, then you can assign the phone system virtual license, and obviously you can check the status, whether the status is complete or not by running get-cs online application instance association status. It should show success, like how it is showing here. This would be a good screenshot to keep handy, where for a working user, this is how ideally it should look like when you run the get-cs auto attendant identity. And you can see all the settings that are associated and the application instances that is associated with that particular auto attendant. Scenario number 2 is dial pad missing. As I mentioned, we don't get these kind of issues common these days. It used to be a big deal a year ago. So generally what we have found is on most of the cases when a dial pad is missing, we found out that the user is not enterprise voice enabled. So you can sign into set-cs user, and you can mention enterprise voice enabled true, and hosted voice will be true. Now, if you have done all these things and if you're still not, if this still does not get reflected properly, Then you can open up a ticket with Microsoft. We'll run an internal sync on our side, which will synchronize the Active Directory with our business voice directory, and that should sort this issue out. Again, the dial pad missing in Teams client is very similar to dial pad missing on the Skype for Business client. So we'll do the same thing, right? We'll confirm the assigned licenses, confirm whether user is enabled for enterprise voice. You'll have to check the string for Microsoft Teams that is calling support service. Is PSTN calling allowed? So make sure it's checked. Again, if not, if you have done all these things and you have set it for enterprise voice, make sure you get all the details of the user account. Open up a ticket, mention all the details there, and Microsoft will run a sync that is between AAD and business voice directory. So for this next section, from here on, my colleague Tanya will take over, and she's going to explain to you in detail about guest access and Federation chat and the rest of the session.
Thank you. Now we will see some more troubleshooting scenarios. However, we will learn the fundamental of technology first, and then we'll take a look at the scenarios. We'll go first with guest access and federated chat. We'll discuss their concepts, flows, and few scenarios. When you need to communicate and collaborate with people outside your organization, Microsoft Teams gives you two different ways to make that happen. The first is external access, which is also known as Federation, who lets you find, call, and chat with users in other domains, for example, contoso.com. The second would be guest access, which lets you add individuals to your teams as guests using their email address. You can collaborate with guests as you would with any other users in your organization. With guest access, you can provide access to teams, documents, in channels, resources, chats, and other applications to people outside your organization, regardless of their domains, while maintaining control over your corporate data. Nowadays, it is very common in every organization that people have to collaborate with their partners, vendors, or suppliers. Guest access is the best method to add them to a team where they can chat, call, meet, and collaborate on files as well. On the other hand, if we talk about federated chat, it lets you chat, call, find, and set up meeting with people from other domains. If you want external users to have access to teams and channels, guest access might be a better way to go. External access is turned on by default in Teams, which means your org can communicate with all external domains. Teams admin can anytime turn it off or specify which domains to include or exclude. So this completely depends on your organizational needs. We'll be moving on to next slide to see some feature differences between guest access and external access. Here is the table which is showing some of the basic feature differences an individual can have with guest access or external access. For an example, for the people that have external access enabled, they can search user across other external tenants if they have allowed those domains in their Teams admin center. And same configurations would be required from the external tenant as well. However, guest users don't have this opportunity. Another different example would be for sharing files. Users with guest access can share files within the team they are added to. However, users with external access would not have that privilege. Please do take a look at this chart and decide whatever suits best for your organization and plan accordingly. For an example, you can make private calls both in external access and guest access. You can chat. If you want to allow screen sharing mode that is not available in external access, but that is available in guest access. So basically this chart gives you a feature difference between external access and guest access so that you can choose whatever is best suited for your organization. Moving on to the next slide. Now we will be discussing about how the guest access actually work in Teams, how actually it looks when someone invites a guest user to the team and how it looks at the recipient end. What steps we need to follow while we are inviting and accepting the guest invites. We have a very short video for you to watch. You will surely get an idea how it actually looks, and then we will proceed further with the
This demonstration will cover inviting external users or guests to Microsoft Teams. Adding a guest is essentially the same process as adding any other member, with an added step in the process. First, we type in the UPN or user principal name of the guest we want to invite. The search results recognize that this is an external user and adds guest to the end. These two users have already been added as guests before, but look what happens when we add a brand new user. A pencil icon appears, allowing us to set the display name for the guest. This can only be done when adding a brand new guest or manually through PowerShell. Invitations will be sent to the guests, and from there they can accept the invitation and access the team. Guests can be removed the same way as any other user. Teams with guests will display a message indicating as such when looking at the member list or the team channel. Next, guests receive an email invitation that grants them access to the Microsoft team. All the user has to do is click the link in the invite and open it with either the desktop client or a web browser. In this example, we're opening Teams in a web browser. The user will notice an alert in the bottom left menu and a new section called Your Accounts that allows you to switch between tenants. Switching to a brand new tenant will bring up a window to accept the invite and set up a trust between the two organizations. Depending on the organization's sign-in requirements, such as Modern Auth or MFA, the user may be required to sign in again. The guest now has access to the new team and all the features that are allowed by the IT administrator. That concludes this demonstration. Our next demonstration will cover IT admin and service settings for guest access.
Thank you. So you have seen the user side of inviting and accepting the guest invitation. However, what it looks to us at the backend, we'll take a look to that now. From here, we will be discussing how the call flow works when a user sends an invitation to a user who is outside their organization to be able to add them as a guest to his team. So if you looked at the video carefully, the user or an owner went to his team's client, went to the members list, added a user using the UPN. Once the owner will add the users using the UPN of the external user, Teams will try to connect with Teams middle tier service. Middle tier service is the backbone of Teams and interacts with almost all associated applications. Middle tier service will contact the invitation manager, and invitation manager will send the UPN of the external user that has been added to the team to the invitation manager storage for storing it in its storage. And from there, it will go to the Microsoft Graph service, where it will connect to MSODS, which is basically our Azure Active Directory. There it will create and add the external user's identity in the Azure Active Directory. Once that is done, it will go back to the invitation manager, who will create a redeem URL for the external user to be used as an invitation and made it to the middle tier. Middle tier service will then contact the team's email service, who will send an email to the guest mailbox. So this is the first part of the guest access, where user sends an invitation to an external user. Now we'll take a look at the next step, where guest user redeems the invitation. Now the guest user has received the email and clicked on the invitation link. It will take the guest user to the browser, as we have already seen in the video, from where it will contact to the invitation manager service, which will in turn contact to the invitation manager storage to check the UPN of the guest user. If you remember, this was stored at the time of inviting this guest user. If the invitation manager storage will be able to locate the UPN of the guest user, it will proceed to move towards and contact the graph service to check the user in MSODS, which is again our Azure Active Directory for verification purpose. Once the verification is done, and if it will be able to locate the user in MSODS, which is Azure Active Directory, it will update the guest user object. So there are a few parameters which will be updated in Azure Active Directory during this process. One particular attribute which will be mapped is alternative security IDs once this user will be added to MSODS. This is a very critical attribute to be checked while troubleshooting on guest access issues. Once the attribute is mapped correctly, it will go back to invitation manager, which will direct the request to teams based upon the security parameters that they have in place, like MFA or any other security parameters that they have in their organization. Then the guest user will be able to switch tenants successfully. Hence, this was the basic flow from both the ends for the guest access. Now we'll be moving to the next slide. Now we'll take a look on the configurations that are required for the guest access to be in place and work smoothly for your organization. We have 4 places where we need to have proper configurations to make it work perfectly with proper permissions. First one is Azure Active Directory. Second one is M365 group settings. Third one is from Teams Admin Center. And the last one is from SharePoint Admin Center. We'll take a look at each of them separately. So we'll moving on the next slide. We'll talk first about Azure Active Directory. From Azure Active Directory, move to user settings, where you will find an option to manage external collaboration settings. From there, you can modify the permissions as per your organizational needs. For an example, if you want the members of the team can invite the guest users or not, or if you wish to limit the guest user permission level. Another important thing here is the last option that you see, which states collaboration restrictions. It works the same way as Federation, where you can choose if you wish your users to send an invitation to any domain, or if you wish to allow some domains or block some. It completely depends on your organizational needs. Please choose the correct settings while planning. So we'll moving on to the next slide to check the configuration for M365 groups. You need to navigate to Microsoft 365 Admin Center and move to Settings, and then Org-wide Settings and Services tab, and then Office 365 Groups. These are the mandatory settings that should be in place if you wish your owners to add people outside the organization, or if you wish your guests can access the group content. without these settings, you won't be able to achieve these things. So your group members outside the organization would not be able to access the group content, or your group owners would not be able to add people who are outside your organization, which is the basic requirement in guest access. So we'll moving on to the next slide. These are the configurations that are required from the team side to enable guest access from Teams Admin Center. You need to navigate to Teams Admin Center, move to org-wide settings from the left pane, and select guest access. Turn on the guest access and you will get an additional list of features that can be available to guests in your Teams related to calls, meetings, messaging, extra. There are some extra settings as well. If you navigate to guest access in Teams Admin Center, you will be able to see all those settings as shown in the picture in the right side. You can choose as per your organizational requirements. If you wish, you can also enable guest access using PowerShell commands. The PowerShell commands are listed here on the screen. We'll be moving to next slide to see the configurations required from the SharePoint side so that you can also collaborate with your guest on files as well. From SharePoint Admin Center side, navigate to sites and active sites. From the active sites, select the particular sites and click sharing. Please select the option to anyone or new or existing guest. These configurations will again depend on your organizational needs. Please sit back with your team and take decisions to have a proper configuration in place. So this would be required from the SharePoint if you want to share files within Teams with your guest users. Moving on to the next slide. Now we will analyze the complete configurations part that we have just run through. Whenever you will try to add a guest user to your team, this will be the checks that will run at the backend. First of all, a check will be made on Azure Active Directory, as you can see in the picture on the left-hand side. If these settings are in place, it will move ahead to Microsoft 365 groups. If not, invitations will be denied. So if you have enabled the guest access in Azure Active Directory, then the step would be moved forward to the second step. Otherwise, your invitation or authentication will be denied. Further, if Microsoft 365 group settings would be in place, owner will be able to add guest, otherwise guest addition will be denied. Then it will move to step 3. And there it stays guest authentication. Guest authentication will make checks if group owners are allowed to add guests or not. And then accordingly, it will check if your SharePoint Online allows external sharing or not, or if users have access to board, apps, etc. And then it will proceed accordingly. Once this checklist is complete, then your users would be able to invite guests from your tenant successfully. Now let's take an example. If you have been added as a guest to a team from another organization for working on a project, and it seems that the project is over, external organization forgets to remove you from their team as a guest, and you wish to leave that team, what steps you can follow? We'll be moving on to next slide to see the steps that you can follow. If you wish to leave an external organization being a guest, you need to navigate to myapps.microsoft.com. It is completely user perspective, and it will be on the user's identity itself. You need to click on your name on the upper right corner and select organization. There you will have a list of organization you are a part of in Teams. You can choose to leave the organization as per your needs. If you see the picture on the right hand side, So the primary organization of the user Lee is Contoso, which is managed by Contoso if you see in the organization list. But the second Contoso is the company which he is a part of as a guest. So if he wants to leave that organization as a guest, he can click on sign in to leave organization. It will ask for his sign in ID and password of that organization, which he is a part of as a guest. And then after login, he would be able to leave that organization successfully. Now we will be moving to the next slide. After setting up the guest access, if you come across any issues, these are the basic information that you can collect and analyze the problem. First of all, take the output of get MSOL user to check for the alternative security IDs, which was the attribute mapped at the time of creating and adding the guest user in MSODS, which is Azure Active Directory. This attribute should have some value. It should not be blank or 0 or any comma. In that case, it is possible that there would be issues while guest user tries to access the invitation. Mostly you will have to remove and re-add the guest user. Other than that, you can gather Teams log, Fiddler log using the location shown here and check for the errors. But the most important thing is alternative security IDs. This is an attribute which you will see once you will take an output of get MSOL user of any user. And from the output, it would be a third or fourth option, which states alternative security IDs. This value should not be blank, 0 or comma. We'll be moving on to next slide. Here is the first troubleshooting scenario where a user is unable to add guests to the team. Please do take a look at the error carefully. It says we ran into an issue, please try again later. For troubleshooting this issue, we collected the Teams log, Fiddler logs. The errors we found from the Teams log is failed to execute MS Graph backend request, send invitation request. And from the Fiddler, it quite the same, failed to execute MS Graph backend request, send invitation request. The server failed to respond correctly. If you remember the flow diagram that I showed, invitation manager did connected with the MS Graph service, and MS Graph service did contacted the MSODS, which was Azure Active Directory. So here also it says that failed to execute MS Graph backend request service. Hence, there should be something missing from the Azure Active Directory side. And we went ahead, verified the configuration, and found that the domain of the guest user was not in the allowed domains. So they did not keep it open for all the domains and allowed some specific domain. We will look at another interesting scenario now. Moving on to the next slide. In this scenario, the guest user was not able to redeem the invite. Please take a look at the error shown carefully. It says your invitation was revoked. Please ask your inviter to invite you again. We see the following error from Fiddler, where it again says invitation redemption failed. Then we went ahead and checked the get MSOL output of the user, and the attribute for alternative security IDs was blank, which I mentioned earlier as well. The attribute for alternative security IDs should not be blank, 0 or comma. There should be some values in it. Whenever this doesn't get mapped successfully due to any reason, most probably you will have to re-invite the user. We'll be moving on to next slide to show how you can remove a user completely so that it can also be removed from the recycle bin. Otherwise, it will again create issues. You can run the following commands that are there on the screen to verify if the user has been deleted properly and then re-invite the guest. So you can run the command get msol user principal name, and then you can paste out the UPN of the user and then return deleted users and then pipe and then remove msol user, remove from recycle bin. So this process will remove the user from recycle bin as well. And then you can run a command get msol user return deleted user. So you if that user will still there, it will be there. I hope this helps you for sure while troubleshooting the guest access issues. Now we will be talking about federated chat. So we'll be moving on to next slide. For a quick revision, first, you can use external access when you need a solution that lets external users in other domains find people, call, chat, and set up meetings with you. External users have no access to your organization, teams, or teams resources. Choose external access when you want to communicate with users outside your organization who are still on Skype for Business, online or on-premise, or Skype consumer as well. By default, external access is turned on in Teams, which means that your organization can communicate with all external users. If you add blocked domains, all other domains will be allowed. And if you add allowed domains, all other domains will be blocked. I will repeat this. If you add blocked domains, all other domains will be allowed. And if you add allowed domains, all other domains will be blocked. The exception to this rule is if anonymous participants are allowed in meetings only. So there are actually 3 scenarios for setting up external access in Teams Admin Center. One is open federation. Second is allow specific domains. Third is block specific domains. If we talk about open federation, in this scenario, your users can communicate with all external domains that are running Teams or Skype for Business and are using open federation or have added you to their allowed list. So if you have open federation, you can communicate with anyone outside your organization. It's just a small catch here that the external organization have also allowed you. Otherwise, they also have open federation. Then only it will work. In case of allow specific domain, all other domains will be blocked. Once you allow specific domains, you limit external access to only the allowed domains. So your open federation will be closed. Only the allowed specific domains your users will be able to chat with. In case of blocked domains, you can communicate with all external domains except the ones you have blocked. You need to add the domains which you want to block in the block list. For example, you have blocked abc.com. Other than abc.com, you will be able to communicate with all other domains. So this is how it works. Now we will be moving on to the next slide. In order to understand the external access, we need to have a basic idea of the type of environments that we can have. So one is pure online environment where you have Skype for Business online with Microsoft Teams or Microsoft Teams only. Another is pure on-premise where you have your Skype for Business server hosted on-premise. And the last one, which is the combo of two, is the hybrid environment, where you can have Sky for Business on-premise with Sky for Business online and Teams, or Sky for Business on-premise with Microsoft Teams. Now we will take a look at the configurations required in case of online, on-prem, and hybrid environments. So we'll be moving on to the next slide. For the pure online environment, where you have SFP online and or Microsoft Teams, navigate to Teams Admin Center. On the left side, you will find org-wide settings and then external access. Turn it on as per your requirement if you wish to enable for Sky for Business and Teams user or Sky for consumer users too. Please take the note that if you add domains as allowed or blocked, then the federation becomes closed and you will be able to communicate with only allowed domains or domains other than you have blocked. You can use PowerShell commands to enable external access, which are visible on the screen here. Other than if you wish that you are not okay with enabling it from the Teams Admin Center, you can also use PowerShell commands, whatever best suits you. We'll be moving on to the next slide to check configurations for on-prem and hybrid environment. For on-prem environment, we have Edge server being used for federation. We need to run the commands using PowerShell on Sky for Business Edge server on-premise to set a federation from on-premise side. The same fundamental follows here as well for open federation, allowed and blocked domains. Please make sure that you have assigned the external access policy to the users as well. Otherwise, it will not work for the users. In case of hybrid, since this is a combo of both the environments, you have to enable federation on both the environments, that is online and on-premise. Please make sure that your hybrid is set up correctly as per the recommendations from Microsoft. And the most important point here to note is that your DNS records should point on-premise in case of hybrid. External access settings should be same for both of them, that is from online side and from the on-premise side. So we'll be moving on to next slide. Here is a table which shows the chat experience for external users. For an example, if your Teams upgrade mode is SFB with Teams Collab, you need to use SFB client to chat, or if you are on Teams only, you need to use Teams client. Further, the second table shows how the presence works. If the publisher of the status is an island mode, the watcher is either on Teams or Skype, he would be able to see the presence of Skype for Business of the publisher. If the publisher is on Teams only, the watcher will be able to see the presence of his Teams client. The third table on the right shows the incoming chat and calls behavior. If you wish to have meetings from external users coming in Teams client, then you have to set Teams only mode, or if you wish to have messages in Skype for Business client, then you have to set mode other than Teams only. So in the Teams only mode, all the incoming chats and calls would be in Teams client. If you have any mode other than Teams only, Skype for Business would be the primary client for incoming chats and calls. In case of federation. So we'll be moving on to the next slide to talk about Teams native federation. If you and the external party are in Teams only mode, in case of federation, you can enjoy the rich formatting such as @mentions and other chat features in one-to-one chats only. We do have some limitations to it as of now, such as multi-party conversations, file transfers, or priority notifications, screen share if you want to give and take control with the external party. So this is the current limitation that is not supported with native federation, but for the one-to-one chat purpose, it is available for Teams only users. If both of the users, the federated and the main user, are on Teams only mode and they have federation enabled, they can enjoy this Teams native federation, which looks so cool. We'll be moving on to the next slide. If you wish to communicate with Skype consumer users, you need to enable this in Teams Admin Center first. If you remember the picture I showed you while talking about the external access, there were two options. One, to enable federation with Skype for Business and Teams user, and one for Skype consumer users. So if you wish to enable this, you need to enable this in Teams Admin Center first, and then use the email address of the Skype user to search on Teams. So you have to use the email address of the Skype consumer users. There are some known limitations to this as well right now, like no rich formatting, for example, @mentions and other chat features that are not available on it right now. Group chats aren't supported right now. Searching through Skype ID and phone number is unsupported. Only email address is supported for search at this time. We'll be moving on to the next slide for an interesting troubleshooting scenario related to federation. In this scenario, federation doesn't work between two Teams only users from two different tenants. One of them had a hybrid setup with Skype for Business on-premise. Please take a look at the error carefully. We collected and checked the Teams diagnostic logs and found the following error code 504/72024. This is actually a known error. You need to check the service principal name for Skype, if it is enabled or not. The app principal ID, which you can see on the screen, is default for Skype for Business, and this is defined. If you see the screenshot that is pasted just above the last one, it has an app principal ID, which is default, and it should be the same for Skype for Business, and it is defined. We found it to be false, and that's why the problem was appearing. Now we'll be looking at some more scenarios other than guest access, which will be for meeting sync issues with Teams, which majorly we have seen with Exchange on-premise. So first we will look at some fundamentals, and then we will move into troubleshooting scenarios. We will be moving on to next slide. This is a high-level architecture for Microsoft Teams, which I am presenting to make you more comfortable with the things that happen at the back end. For the quick revision, Teams is dependent on many applications, and one of them is Exchange. So we'll be talking about issues related to calendar. So for calendar meetings, Teams leverage Exchange as highlighted in this picture. So when we log into Teams, most of the time, calendar doesn't load immediately and take few seconds. The reason being, it checks for the mailbox in the backend, and once it discovers, it fetches the calendar invite using the middle tier service. Teams uses middle tier services mostly to contact most of the applications. If Teams wants to connect with SharePoint, OneDrive, Exchange, middle tier service is the one which actually helps to connect with all the applications. It is the backbone of Teams, you can say. So we'll be moving on to next slide to know more about middle tier service. Whenever there is a request that needs to be sent from Teams to Exchange, it doesn't go directly. It goes via middle tier service, as I stated earlier. It is the one who actually gets you the calendar in Teams from Exchange. Middle tier uses AWS managed APIs to access the mailbox and get you the calendar in Teams. For mobile client, it relies on REST APIs to fetch your calendar. If you are chatting in a meeting, middle tier contacts the chat service to create chat threads. It calls AAD for auth related stuff. In general, middle tier is the backbone of Teams. It actually connects with every service to get all the applications in one go. So we'll be moving on to next slide to show you the flow diagram. Whenever your Teams client tries to contact Exchange, it contacts the middle tier service. Once the middle tier learns that the mailbox is not online, it contacts the Exchange on-premise. And there we have virtual directories where the EWS Auto Discover services are running. Middle tier service will contact them, and this is how it will fetch your calendar in Teams in case of Exchange on-premise. We'll be moving on to the next slide to see different environments in Exchange. These are the different type of Exchange environments. We can have like online, pure online, on-premise, hybrid, Exchange dedicated vNext, etc. There can be feature difference between different environments. Some of the features require hybrid environment to be in place with your Office 365 tenant. Users with mailbox hosted on-premise must be synchronized to Azure Active Directory. They can make use of all the features in the above scenario, but additionally, they can manage meetings provided Exchange Server 2016 CU3 Plus or above is running on-premise. So we'll be moving on to the next slide to check what all features would be available to whom. In the left side of the table, there are different environments listed. If you see carefully, Exchange Online and Exchange Online Dedicated vNext, majority of the features are available for you. You can opt as per your requirements. If you already have on-premise, you can go for hybrid. This completely depends on your organizational needs and what are you looking for. So this table actually demonstrates what all features will be available in which environment. So we'll be moving on to the next slide. Please take a look at the minimum requirements for Exchange mailbox feature support. For example, if you wish to have Teams calendar app, the minimum requirement is to have Exchange 2016 CU3 Plus, or if you wish to have voicemail tab in Teams, you need to have Exchange Online. If you wish to have cloud voicemail delivery, any supported Exchange version. It supports any Exchange version. Cloud voicemail settings example change greetings. It requires Exchange 2013 CU19 Plus. So we'll be moving on to the next slide to check the prerequisite. Here is a list of prerequisites that to have calendar in Teams. If you have Exchange Online, you are good to go. But if you have on-premise, please make a note of these prerequisites, which should be in place, like you need to have hybrid setup, minimum Exchange Server 2016 CU3 and above is required. Users with on-premise mailbox again must be synchronized to Azure Active Directory using Azure AD Connect. Exchange must trust OAuth token from EvoSTS. Teams upgrade policy should be other than SFB with Teams Collab and or SFP Online. Teams apps setup policy should have Teams Calendar app. Auto Discover V2 to accept unauthenticated request from Teams. So these are basically the prerequisites that you can have while setting up hybrid for your Exchange on-premise server. We'll be moving on to the next slide to see some interesting troubleshooting scenarios. One of the scenario that we have seen is meeting tab is meeting tab missing in the Teams client when using Exchange Server 2019. Mostly we have noticed that tenant have client access rule in place or filtering traffic to Exchange Server, and the IP address or URLs for Teams middle tier service is not present. So please make sure to add required IPs and URLs for SFB Online and Teams in client access rule to allow middle tier to access users mailbox. We'll be moving on to next slide to check another interesting scenario. This scenario talks about meetings are not synced to the Teams client, but they are visible in Outlook. This happens mostly when Exchange Hybrid is not configured correctly, as there are no users with online mailbox. However, Teams middle tier service will make an authenticated connection to AWS service to retrieve mailbox data. This authentication process will require on-premise Exchange server URLs, which are configured as SPNs in the tenant Azure AD service principal for Exchange, and on-premise Exchange is configured with OAuth server for EOSTS. Both steps will be handled automatically by running the Exchange Hybrid Configuration Wizard on Exchange 2016. If admin do not wish to set up a hybrid, they can follow the steps to configure hybrid modern authentication. You can go through the steps to validate the hybrid modern authentication, which is listed on the screen. We'll be moving on to the next slide to check some other common issues. These are some common issues which you can encounter. For example, resource account sync delay. It could be possible that you will not be able to assign a phone number to the resource account, or you get the error the following application instance is not present in BBD. Request you to allow 24 hours for syncing. If it has already been 24 hours, remove the phone number assignment, delete the resource account, and then create a new one with a different name. Another issue would be users can't create a team. Your company may have set policy restrictions who can create Office 365 groups or teams. So request you to check with your IT admin to understand the company policies for creating groups and teams. Most probably they will need to check the settings in Azure. Maybe they have created a security group who can create teams or who cannot. So we will be moving on to the next slide. If you wish to know more on which new features are in development for Microsoft Teams, kindly navigate to the URL listed on the screen. Kindly take a note of it, and it will give you a list of features that are in development and when they will be available for you according to your tenant type. We will be moving on to the next slide. These are some of the useful links, which includes the requirement for Microsoft Teams, which has been covered already in the first part of the session. How you can install Teams, how you can prepare your environment, what are the IPs and URLs that you need to allow on your firewall, and some known issues with Teams for now. It keeps updating, so always remember to check for the updated article. We'll be moving on to the next slide. We hope this session is helpful. Thank you very much for watching.